I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco in the northern part of the great state that I live in. And got a surprise for you tonight. I'm not going to be talking baseball. Just the whole night with this guest, it won't be baseball, although I've had the most stimulating baseball conversations with Bill Hall, a county commissioner in Oregon. And today we're going to keep it serious and get out of the candy store of life. How are you, sir?
I'm good. It's Friday afternoon. As the tape's rolling, it is sunny and about 65 degrees here in Newport, Oregon, on the beautiful Oregon coast. And, hey, life couldn't be better.
No, it couldn't. With a few little bumps in the road lately.
Oh, heck yes. But my friends tell me I am a relentless optimist, so I'm always looking for the silver lining attached to the cloud. And it's been real cloudy.
It is real cloudy, but I want you to help me and my audience describe the differences between federal rights and state rights. And I'm going to throw out, 5 things right now that Trump is throwing at us, and whether or not he has the right to do this or not, you're going to help me determine how will the states come in to stop him from some of the craziness. Okay, the 5 things that I want to talk about is Trump/Obamacare, the legalization of weed in certain states. Mine, California, was just legalized. Yours has been legalized for a while. I want to talk about school lunches and why the President of the United States, for whatever reason, decided that instead of healthy food from now on, fruits, vegetables, this, that, and the other thing, they're going to go back to the old ways. And they're going to have wheat bread, they're going to have white bread, they're going to, that's coming down. Planned Parenthood is coming down. Initially, he said he wants to disband Planned Parenthood. I feel optimistic, as do you, on this specific issue, given the reaction of the country to this. I think that if there is some attempt to defund Planned Parenthood, I think that because they're a non-profit, they'll have no trouble raising money, which is basically what we do. We pay taxes. When we give to charity, we write it off on our income tax. So we, instead of giving the money to the government, let them decide who to give it to, we basically give it to our charity of choice, and that works fine. Until yesterday, when the POS came down with either a mandate or just sign something. I know it has to go through checks and balances. He wants to blur the line between church and state to the point where there is no line anymore. He wants to allow preachers, rabbis, anybody who has a nonprofit through a church, they can now legally politicize from the pulpit. So I don't know what it'll take to get that legal, but he signed something yesterday to do that. As far as I'm concerned, the thing that irks me the very most is fucking with the school lunch program, because it's been determined through my own personal experiences in life that you can't learn on an empty stomach. Not that we were poor. I just wasn't a breakfast kid. I hated breakfast food. And my mother didn't just change up on it. I hated cereal. I hated eggs. She could have thrown some bananas and some chips and just filled up my little belly, and I would have been a better student for my career. So I'm sure I'm not the only one. It transcends. But
well, let me share a story with you. Could I, on that subject, on the relationship between good nutrition and good learning? Right here from my own backyard, two of our local school staff members about 15 years ago started what they called the backpack program. They noticed that there were a whole lot of kids, they worked in the front office of one of our local elementary schools, who had no issues Monday through Thursday or Friday morning. But on Friday afternoon, all of a sudden, they were acting up and being disruptive, and they observed this for months and started looking for, what the heck is going on? What is the common thread here? And they realized that these were poor kids. These were kids who knew after they finished their school lunch on Friday, they weren't going to get a solid meal until they got to school on Monday morning. So they started a program which is now spread throughout our school district, very well supported by the community, and they do it with discretion so that kids aren't singled out, but kids from poor families, families living in poverty, which unfortunately in our county is basically about 1 in 4 families who have a school-aged child, can go to the school office Friday afternoon as they're heading out the door and collect a backpack for free filled with nutritious foods like, bananas and peanut butter and whole wheat bread and all the good things that will hopefully help see the child through the weekend. So this, in my opinion, and just an opinion, is that I think this is the vile pettiness of this disgusting turd of a human being that a minority of this country has elected president because it was one of Michelle Obama's signature achievements. That and that alone is why he wants to roll it back. He never attended a public school. None of his children ever attended a public school. But by doing this, it's one more way to say, in your face, Michelle Obama. And it is reprehensible. It is unconscionable. And frankly, I hope he does a few extra turns on the griddle in hell because of it.
Well,
have I told you how I really feel?
Why do you keep holding back on me? That's the only
thing. Sorry. Yeah, I'm glad to have the chance to unload on you.
All right.
Friend.
How does the POS, the piece of shit, justify putting people out there with no insurance and pre-existing conditions? How can he do this? What's going to happen? Are we going to go all the way back? People are literally going to die because of this. And what is Congress doing to come up? We need checks and balances. And what I wanted to ask you about with Trump, Obamacare, he's leaving it up to the state's discretion. Now, just from talking to you and knowing the spirit of Oregon and California, too, as a matter of fact, if left up to the state's discretion, everybody would be insured, and there wouldn't be any problems with pre-existing conditions. But unfortunately, because we have 50 states, and about half of them are located in the South, which automatically starts with start in bad trouble when you have Southerners making decision on stuff like this. How can he do this? And can he do it? He said he's going to do it, and what does it have?
Well,
it was voted by Congress. Is it going to be voted by the Senate?
I really don't think so. I know that millions of people in this country are in fear right now after that vote by the House of Representatives, and I totally relate to it because if this bill in its current form becomes law, millions of people are going to lose their health coverage, and tens of thousands, if not millions, will die as a result of that. But
prematurely.
Yeah. But one very good point I heard made by a commentator just this morning gives me some hope is you have to remember, Congress people represent, members of the House represent some 700,000 people. So, relatively speaking in our country, that's a pretty small slice of folks. There are some very blue districts. There are some very red districts. But senators represent entire states, and as a result of that, all of them, even in those red states in the South, take a place like North Carolina. Charlotte is actually a pretty progressive city. I don't know about the rest of North Carolina, but, and that's replicated again and again across the country. And those senators know that they have to answer to every senator in their state. And they may try to push something along these lines, but I think the folks who say this bill in its form is dead on arrival in the Senate are right. Again, I think this piece of shit, Eddie Munster, Paul Ryan, and all of his minions, again, I hope they roast in hell because of their indifference and hatred of the disadvantaged among us, those in need.
Minorities.
Yep.
That's it.
Oh, yeah.
And it becomes a mindset of the country. We've had a lot of violence because, in essence, the said piece of shit is giving these thugs permission to go out there and emulate his mindset.
Exactly. And, and then when he looks into the camera on a TV interview and says, "Stop it," without much sincerity, sorry, that does not absolve you of what your followers have been doing for these last few months. It absolutely does not. Oh, right now I am looking at the TV screen with the sound muted, and I am seeing one of my own congressmen from the state of Oregon, a fellow named Greg Walden. He is chair of one of the key House committees. He's a Republican. He represents the central and eastern portion of the state. In other words, the largest House district in Oregon, but the most sparsely populated one. And he voted for this monstrosity of a bill. He helped push it through, despite the fact that 1/3 of his constituents are on Medicaid. And I hope to heaven that his folks will wake up when he is up for re-election next year and say, this man voted against us. This man voted against our most fundamental interests, our most fundamental needs.
Boy, how could you do that with a straight face? Or do they care really, in essence? They get into Congress, they're in 2, 4, 6 years.
Yeah.
They must have made a fortune in that time. They have a lifetime insurance, pensions, all of this. Are they just going to say, screw you, America, based on their own belief systems that are antiquated and archaic?
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, again, I talked to somebody who I consider pretty insightful, and I was a friend, and I was asking him, why? You look at multiple polls, and they say that only something like 2 or 3% of Trump voters regret their vote at this point. And
that's the biggest tragedy.
Yeah.
These are folks that cannot make a mistake, cop to it, and learn from it. They can't.
Right. But this friend of mine, I asked him why.
It was in the papers. They told us Hillary was a crook, and they had the FBI come in on the last day and associate more emails, and it never worked out, and all of that stuff, and they can't say, this was wrong. Look what's happening.
No.
Why are so many protests, violent protests? That brings us to another thing.
Yeah.
Oregon, in your state, in my state, in Berkeley, Portland especially, they've had, these aren't just riots. It's like frickin' Watts. Night after night after night. You'll have to tell me, too, what that accomplishes and the cost of policing and cleaning up and the crime and all that. I don't think we have protesters anymore. We have thugs. We have the protesters out there, but they're overwhelmed by these thugs on both sides that use any kind of public gathering to get together and just act like banshees. And,
very true. And you have thugs on the left, and you have thugs on the right, and you have thugs, frankly, which I think have no political ideology whatsoever, but they look upon any mass protest as an opportunity to smash and burn. And I think it's tragic because, look at on Inauguration Day, I think there were something like 200 people arrested in Washington, D.C. on Inauguration Day protests. And so, of course, the right focuses on that. They don't point out the fact that the next day, literally on all 7 continents on Earth, for the first time in recorded human history, people came together. The estimates are 3, 4, 5 million people. I was one of them, to offer a nonviolent protest against the dawn of the Trump administration. As far as I know, there were the arrests that day among 5 million people were numbered in the dozens. The worst complaint I heard was about littering, people leaving their signs behind, and I think it is counterproductive. I am a big believer, as Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, John Lennon, and many other of my heroes were, in peaceful, nonviolent protest. I understand the frustration that drives some of these people, but really I think it hurts the cause in the long run more than it helps it. And it's a shame, but it's one more factor of life in America in 2017.
Well, before we get to the separation of church and state, let's talk a little bit about the legalization of first medical marijuana, and then California has followed with, they've had medical marijuana legal for 10 years. They, in the last election, decided to legalize it entirely, and this entire year is being spent with local governments licensing dispensaries and stores and this, that, and the other thing to sell marijuana and get a big piece of the action, which, because you are ahead of us, meaning California, Oregon, you've had this for a while. First, let me ask you, you had medical marijuana pass first.
Yeah, about 20 years ago, actually. So we've got a lot of history with it. Yeah.
Well, certain states have certain different qualifications of what it takes to get medical marijuana. Now, me, for instance, a card holder, I was prescribed, if you will, or recommended, they call it recommended by a doctor in California for medical marijuana, and the causes were floating anxiety and wanting to go to sleep at night, not being able to sleep at night. Those are the causes. Now, I can take you down south where marijuana for medical purposes is legal. I think it's legal in all 50 states. But the idea is, how disabled do you have to be to get medical marijuana? Now, I said that flippantly. Having trouble sleeping and floating anxiety, these are mental problems. This is something marijuana helps alleviate.
Mm-hmm.
And so it isn't like they're just giving it to anybody. But by the same token, they're misjudging the importance of people getting it for mental purposes, to make them feel better. PDT or whatever.
PTSD. Yep.
PTSD, right.
Post-traumatic stress
Government
disorder.
studies helps a lot of people. They still come back and deny. Do you think that the federal government can come in and reverse what's been done by certain progressive states like Oregon and right behind them California?
Probably not from a practical standpoint, although from a legal standpoint, unfortunately, they might be on firmer ground. Let me explain. Let me give a little more history. I believe it was in 1937 that marijuana was made illegal at the federal level. This is something that when I share it with people, a lot of them are absolutely blown away. They say, you mean when Franklin Roosevelt came into office, booze was illegal, but marijuana was legal? Yes. So if anybody has seen Reefer Madness, or even a few clips of it, they know the ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous fear and smear campaign that was conducted against marijuana. And as a result, it has been illegal for 75 years. The prohibition is slowly ending, which to me is only right and rational. I don't think all states have gone to legal medicinal marijuana. I think it's something like 29 or 30. Oregon, California, Colorado, and no, has anybody else done legal? Washington, yeah, of course. Oh, we're so far ahead of the rest of this country, we Western states. What
and by the
Jefferson,
way, there's a lot of catching up because marijuana came into this country in my hometown, Jackson Heights, New York. The Colombians were responsible for a big flood of pot coming in when I was a teenager and helped to guide my life.
I did not know that. Interesting.
Yeah.
But Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, and I love people who always insist on referring to him by his full name, just as conservatives always refer to Barack Hussein Obama by his full name. But Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, who to me looks like Granny Clampett in male drag, and if you listen to him, you'll see that as well. He has said that the feds are not going to go after medical marijuana, but they are looking at going after recreational marijuana. And
I want to ask you, are there any differences in Oregon, as there are very few differences? Medical marijuana, as I say, can be obtained easily. In Oregon, what is the stipulation to get medical marijuana?
Well, it is very interesting, and there are a lot of people who have an interest in merging the two systems, and to me, for a lot of reasons, I hope that happens, and it makes sense to me. But right now, we have medical marijuana regulated by the Oregon Health Authority, recreational marijuana regulated by the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. But frankly, if you want an Oregon medical marijuana card, it is not difficult to get one. Critics of the system say there are a handful of doctors, and this is true, there are a handful of doctors who have issued the vast majority of the cards in this state. You go in, you pay $50, you spend 10 minutes with the doctor, and you tell him that you have anxiety or chronic pain or any of the other conditions that have been approved for issuance of a card, and you walk out the door with your card. So the bar is pretty low, and, frankly, I think that's how it should be. I think, it has been proven that this is no more dangerous and probably less dangerous than legal booze. And yeah,
definitely less dangerous than legal booze, but not good for driving. And
yeah,
not
exactly.
and not good for combining with other drugs, especially. It's great for sitting home and watching the pretty colors, and enjoying the munchies, and listening to music, and taking a nap. That's what it's.
And this is where I tick off some of my friends who are marijuana proponents. These are people who I believe, I describe them as Church of 420 people. They believe this is the greatest substance ever created by God or nature, that it has absolutely no downsides, that it is perfect, it is great, and, I think like on most...
Well, anything used
the good outweighs the bad.
Excess is going to have downside. There's no... You don't have to make it a Marjo type thing where everybody is... It has disadvantage. Everything has a side effect. Anything you put into your body has a side effect.
And especially if you do it to excess. Yeah. And here's something else that, remember probably when we were both youngins, and you're a few years older than me, but basically we're the same baby boom generation. We heard how marijuana was a gateway drug. Asinine. False. Absolutely false. But based on serious professionals I've talked to, and also, I got to say, experience with a young man, part of my family, that they have documented, unfortunately, if you have a pre-existing tendency to paranoia, that excessive marijuana use can amplify that.
No question about that. And sometimes even if you don't have a predetermined, as one of the side effects, being paranoid. No question about that.
Yeah. And it was a sad case.
It's a very unpleasant side effect, and it takes new people who are trying the drug and trying to get by that 1936 reefer madness bullshit that my mother at age 16 at that time scared the crap out of her for a lifetime about marijuana and went to her grave believing that it was horrible.
That is sad. But, the young man who, because I trust my comfortably zoned audience, my stepson, who I love dearly and is now in his late 20s, he basically decided because of this experience he needed to swear it off, and now he is a connoisseur of craft beers, and he enjoys them legally and responsibly, and that's all I would say to anybody. Whatever the intoxicating substance that brings you mental or physical relief, use it with awareness. Use it responsibly. Is that too much for any of us?
I'll stress keeping it off the roads. I taught traffic school for folks who got tickets for a long time. And the number one thing is driver awareness. Things that gets us into accidents, distractions, this, that, and the other thing. I'd leave it at home. And that's not saying that I always do as I preach, but I no longer drive, haven't driven for a number of years, so I don't put myself in a position of being too high in the road.
Good man.
Kill your high if you run over a grandmother. That's how, no matter whose grandmother it is.
Yeah.
So, that puts it into perspective very well. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And let's close with talking about the separation of church and state and what the ramifications of what he announced today. Does that have to go to the Supreme Court? Are we going to have to keep Ruth Ginsburg alive until she's 140?
Well, frankly, I read an Onion story not too long ago that disclosed the sad fact that actually Ruth Ginsburg has already passed away, but a parade of liberals are taking turns slipping into the Supreme Court building and Febrezing her to keep anybody from discovering this fact. Now, seriously, all seriousness aside, with us because this is a serious issue. That order was done for show. All he did, he made liberals unhappy by issuing this order, but he also PO'd his evangelical base because they were expecting, and a draft executive order was circulated a couple of months ago, which basically said, okay, it is perfectly legal, it is perfectly fine to discriminate against anyone who is part of the LGBTQ community. But no, what he did
I don't
was...
have enough ink in my pen to write out the things we should talk about that makes this guy want this guy to go to hell tomorrow.
If that happens, I would be dancing and spitting on the gravestone. But all this does essentially is a directive to the IRS not to vigorously enforce the Johnson Amendment, which, frankly, they have not been endorsing. They have not been enforcing vigorously anyway. So it is pandering to the states.
They've been daring the federal government to come in. They say they're preaching and politicizing from the pulpit, and for years they have been indeed challenging the government. Spend some money, come after us. Let's see how well you do with that.
Because they've been saying, essentially all this says is if you endorse a candidate from the pulpit, you are in danger of losing your tax-exempt status, which is as it should be. And but unfortunately, we have bought, well, not you and I, but millions of Americans have bought into this myth that the United States was founded as a Christian nation. Thomas Jefferson owned a Koran. And let me tell you, and let me encourage any of the listeners, if you have never experienced something called the Jefferson Bible, Google the Jefferson Bible. What Thomas Jefferson did was take the four Gospels, did a cut and paste job, and put together a book called subtitled The Life and Teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, because he considered Jesus' message, the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, to be the most crystalline, perfect, beautiful, moral teachings in recorded human history, though he considered the supernatural miracles and tales in the Bible to be a joke. One of my favorite Jefferson lines, a year or two before he died, in a letter to a friend, he described the revelation to John, the mark of the beast and the battle of Armageddon and all of that. He described the book of Revelation as the ravings of a lunatic. The founding fathers were not, in any sense, evangelical Christians, and any attempt to claim they are is ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous.
Did they escape England because of religious oppression? Exactly.
Anybody who reads the history of the founding fathers and the colonies will understand that so many of them came here to escape a state religion. All they did, read the First Amendment very carefully, folks, all they did was say there will never be a state religion. Anyone is free to exercise their own religion or not as they see fit, but to have any kind of state-sanctioned religion is absolutely anathema to what the founding fathers stood for.
Trust, that
kind
of thing.
Well, you know what? It's interesting. In God We Trust was added to the coinage in 1864 during the Civil War, but it wasn't put on paper money until 1957. And this is another thing that, of course, blows evangelicals' minds. But the original Pledge of Allegiance did not include under God. That was added during the Eisenhower years as well, when we were in fear of godless communism. Huh?
Yeah, that was a big thing, the change, and, parents explaining to the kids what you're saying. You just don't have to say anything. You could just look at the wall. My mother said, just shut the fuck up and look at the wall. Don't
Your mother was a wise woman.
Yeah. Wow. You say you're an optimist and you're hopeful. I want to end this segment on the most hopeful thoughts that you have.
I still believe in the goodness of the majority of human beings. I still look at the long sweep of recorded history, and I see progress toward a more humane planet, a more humane society. I have to be realistic to acknowledge that there are still millions upon millions in this country and on this planet who are filled with hatred and fear, who do not honor this earth, who do not realize that Mother Earth is fragile. And I'm just hoping and praying and believing, because I don't think I could go on otherwise, that as a planet, we will turn the corner before it's too late.
I think technology will save us.
I hope so.
Given learning and the computers and how that's taken off, I think we'll be able to come up with something down the road to save us.
Yeah.
Not understanding that the planet is our only home. We have no way to get off this planet to go somewhere else. You can't get in a spaceship and go to Mars all of a sudden and build up a community.
No.
And
there is no planet B.
Kids and prospective grandkids, does Trump not really give a fiddler's fuck about his descendants? People.
I don't think he does. I think he's a narcissistic sociopath, which is a terrible combination.
Well, that is indeed.
Before we sign off, can I share a very personal note and a note of thanks to you, my friend? I'm going to say I'm going back 10, 15 years or more when I first was regularly connected to the Internet, and I was Googling about New York City baseball and Ebbets Field and the Polo Grounds, and I came across your blog, and I thought, wow, I love this. And I said, I would be so stoked if I had the opportunity to meet this guy someday. And thanks to Facebook and thanks to the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, I have. So I treasure your friendship. I treasure all my Facebook friends, all my friends on the terrestrial side as well. And do not give up hope, my friends, because without hope, there's no reason to get up in the morning.
There are days, though, we wake up and what can he do tomorrow? That's what, never really expected him to come right out and say, hey, we're just going to allow preachers to preach from the pulpit. We're just politicize from the pulpit. Never expected that. That's almost, that has to go to the Supreme Court. Am I correct? Eventually.
I would think, depending on how much he wants to push it. Like I say, this was really for show. If he really wants to unshackle them and move them forward, I think it will end up at the Supreme Court someday. But really, to quote good old Willie Shakespeare, I think this is going to turn out in the long run, like so much of what he is doing, to be sound and fury signifying nothing.
Well, very well put.
I hope that is the epitaph for the Trump
administration. A Bill quotes a Willie. That's not right? Hey, William Hall. Bill Hall.
Yes.
I don't like to go by
Ralph
William.
Zig Tycho. Hey.
Have you gone by William at one time?
Not really. When I was a grade schooler, they called me.
She was angry at you. Did she use your full name, William, when she was angry?
Not that I can ever remember. I was Billy in grade school, but by about 7th or 8th grade, I was Bill, and I've been ever since.
Well, I've been Ralph Mark Tycho since I was in kindergarten.
Wow.
Ralph Mark Tycho, would you come over here right now? With that choppy little voice that has enthralled me and her and many, many women that I've known
Lord.
over my life. I have Ralph Mark Tycho, how could you do?
Smoke a bowl in my honor tonight, my friend, and I'm going to raise a screwdriver in your honor, okay?
That's good. I'm just gonna be not raise anything for a good 10 minutes after we've stopped. Okay. I'll
okay.
come back.
Works for me. Whatever.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for being my friend. You're terrific. If anybody out there didn't listen to anybody understand, if anybody did listen, you would think on my network I have a number of shows. One of them is the Dodgers Show with Ronnie Rabinovich and Peter Trunk. And you were a guest a couple of weeks back. You came back twice. You were terrific.
And they're going to have me on again. They said I was going to get sick of being asked, but I never get sick of talking about the Brooklyn Dodgers, especially with such wonderful guys as Peter Trunk, a true Dodger fan, and Ronnie Rabinovich.
And Ronnie Rabinovich,
oh my God,
another member of the comfortably zoned home team, who was literally a friend of Jackie when he was growing. He was a little boy and got to know Jackie because his dad was a civil rights attorney, and his dad ran the campaign for the Kennedys, and he is one of the most interesting, progressive human beings with your spirit of confidence and hope that things will indeed be better. So
I would love
I wish I lived in Oregon and you were my councilman, not a councilman.
County commissioner.
Explain how that works.
County commissioner. I am elected one of 3 full-time commissioners, Lincoln County, Oregon, about 1,000 square miles, 47,000 people right smack dab in the middle of the Oregon coast. We have a $99 million annual budget. We provide sheriff's patrols, a jail, health clinics, maintain several hundred miles of roads, and basically nuts and bolts, basic services to the people of Lincoln County. That's it in a nutshell.
Keep up the good work, Bill Hall, and please come back on a regular basis.
Anytime you ask, Zig, I am there. Okay?
Thank you so much, Bill. Makes me feel. And what you said about my blog is really. This was before
Facebook. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it goes back. And I talked, just about the old days of growing up in New York with the Polo Grounds, Yankee Stadium, Ebbets Field, and what it was like to be a Giant fan, what it was like to grow through life, and all of a sudden you love the bitter enemies' memories. I love thinking and talking about Scoons and Jim Gilliam and the Yankees and Bobby Richardson and all these guys. It just no longer. I mean, I still want the Giants to win. I wanted them to win more, but it becomes the game itself that you root for. And I've been so lucky to talk to so many different former players and coaches and managers and writers and authors and stuff. This has been terrific for me. And if you'll remember that early on, it was Tony D'Angelo and Scott Russell who, when I did a show about should Gil be in the Hall of Fame, and
that was the first time we connected, wasn't it? They said
that was the first time I needed to.
So they sent you to me.
They told me go to Bill Hall. He knows everything. He can give you the ins and outs of why Gil didn't get in and why he hasn't, and what his chances are in the future. And you're a maven, Bill Hall.
That is wonderful. The biggest honor I've gotten, and I'm not Jewish, but the biggest honor I've got from Dodger fans is when they tell me I'm a mensch.
Yes. Yeah. I've never heard that directed to me, but there's hope. I'm only 70.
Yeah, hey, I'm about to hit 58, so As long as we're breathing, as long as we're vertical.
You're right behind me. You'll catch me before long, young man.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Alrighty.
All right.
God, I guess we have to sign off. But
and everybody out there, I'm going to end the show the way I end the shows that I enjoy doing the most. I'm going to implore you, Bill, and everybody to keep your humor dry, keep your dreams wet, keep your children out of the offices of military recruiters, and that includes your grandkids, too. And off the laps of clerics that wear dresses. Just to be on the safe side. You could try all 4 things. You could try 3 out of 4 things. Can't hurt you. We'll talk again soon, Bill Hall.
okay. Bye, my friend.
Thank you, sir.